Hi buddies, hope you're doing fine. In this series, we will discuss about the important one words from the Romantic age. If you are ready, let's get started. It is truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good tune must be in want of a wife. Which novel of Jane Austen begins with this sentence? Pride and Prejudice. The Times, which acquired this name in 1788, was earlier known as Daily Universal Register. Who has written Hell is Much Like London? Shelley. Many critics have hailed the publication of the lyrical ballads as the beginning of the Romantic period. In which year was it published? 1798. The Romantic writers were influenced by the idealism of German philosophers such as Kant and Hegel, who emphasized the use of the language really used by men for poetry. Wordsworth. Regarding whom did Charlotte Bronte say the passions are perfectly unknown to her? She rejects even a speaking acquainted with that stormy sisterhood. Jane Austen. Who has in the death of Keats according to Shelley's Adonis? The brutal reviewers who express his dislike for poetry that has a palpable design upon us in one of his letters. Keats. It is no small thing to have so loved the principle of beauty as to perceive the necessary relation of beauty with truth and of both with joy. Who is Arnold talking about in his sentence? Keats. Who called Keats a Greek for his preoccupation with Hellenism in poetry? Shelley. Which book, though not literature, exercised an enormous influence in England during the beginning of 19th century? Thomas Paine's Rights of Man. Who formed Pantisocracy on the bank of Susquehanna? Called Jan Sade. Who wrote Bliss was eaten that dawn to be alive, but to be young was very heaven? William Wordsworth. The age of Romanticism was 1800 to 1850. Name the woman novelist whose pictures of Irish life suggested to Walter Scott the idea of writing Scottish romances. Maria Edgeworth, who writes novel of haunted castles, bandits, trapdoor and horror. Mrs. Anne Radcliffe. Where do we meet Hermes, Lycius, Apollonius, Lamia? The story of Lamia is taken from Philostratus. Keats' Endymion has 4,000 lines. Who is the pair of lovers Endymion does not meet in Keats' Endymion? Romeo and Juliet. The lyrical ballads opens with rhyme of the ancient mariner. The lyrical ballads closes with lines written about Tinton Abbey. Who was the third person with Coleridge and Wordsworth at Quantock Hills when the lyrical ballads were composed? Dorothy Wordsworth. Who wrote our sweetest songs or those that held our saddest thoughts? P.B. Shelley. How do we classify Shelley's Prometheus Unbound, a lyrical drama? Name the journal to which Sade contributed regularly. The Quarterly Review. Sir Walter Scott collected Scottish ballads and published them along with his own as Minstrelsy of the Scottish Border. How old was Byron when he published Hour of Idleness, a collection of poems in heroic couplet? 19. When Hours of Idleness was criticized by the Edinburgh Review, Lord Byron retaliated by writing a satiric piece. What was the title of the satire? English Boards and Scotch Reviewers. How many cantos could Byron complete of Childe Harold's pilgrimage during his 2 years tour of the continent? First two. The first two cantos of Childe Harold take reader to Spain and Portugal, which is the tone of the ending of the second canto of Childe Harold, self-pitying. In which canto does the description of the Battle of Waterloo appear? Canto 3. Who is the hero of Childe Harold? The poet himself, Michael the solitary reaper, and to a Highland girl depict simple common folk. What was Wordsworth's professed aim in the lyrical ballads? Simplicity of diction. Which work inspired Coleridge's Kubla Khan? Purchas Pilgrimage. The name of the prisoner of Chillon was Francois de Boniver. The Vision of Judgment is a satire on Sade. Don Juan has 16 cantos. Who is Heidi in Don Juan, daughter of an old pirate? Where do we find these lines? Man's love is of man's life a thing apart. It's woman's whole existence. Don Juan. Where do we meet these characters? Don Alfonso, Julia Sultana. Don Juan. When he wrote Queen Mab, Shelley was only 18. Which of Shelley's poems has a story from Greek mythology? Prometheus Unbound. Which poem was inspired by the Greek proclamation of independence followed by Greek revolt against Turkish rule? Hellas. We meet characters such as Asia, Hercules, and Jupiter in Prometheus Unbound, in which novel Scott projects Scotland under Robert Bruce King and national hero Castle Dangerous. The Black Dwarf was written by Walter Scott. What is the background of Ivanhoe, enmity of Saxon and Norman? Who wrote the following Castle Rockrent, The Absentee Ormond? Maria Edgeworth. This woman novelist wrote Scotch novelist Thaddeus of Warsaw and the Scottish chief. Who is she? Jane Porter. Who wrote Headlong Hall Maid Marian? Thomas Peacock. One of the Edinburgh Review, William Bagwood. One of the characters of Jane Austen remarks a lady imaginations is very rapid. It jumps from admiration to love, from love to matrimony in a moment. Who said this and in which novel? Darcy in Pride and Prejudice. His sonnet was rejected by a magazine gem on the plea that it would shock mothers. Who is he? Charles Lamb. This patriotic song is often prescribed for school anthologies in India. Who is the poet? Walter Scott. Where do we find Bingley? Bride and Prejudice. When was the unfinished dream poem Kubla Khan published? 1816. Who wrote My hopes are with the dead and on my place with them will be? Robert Southey. Which ballads and short tales are written by Robert Southey? Bishop Hatto. Who wrote the popular nursery tale Three Bears? Robert Southey. What, according to Wordsworth, is the power of nature? To teach, to debate. Name Wordsworth's spiritual autobiography, The Prelude. In which poem do these lines occur? For oft, when on my couch lie in vacant or in pensive mood, to daffodils. Who wrote lectures on Shakespeare and Biographia Literaria? S.T. Coleridge. What is Coleridge's Ahima Poetae, Table Talk and Notes? Who is the author of Story of Rumini? Leigh Hunt. Where were lyrical ballads written? Quantock Hills. Which novel begins with It's a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife? Pride and Prejudice. Who is Elia of Charles Lamb's Essays of Elia? An Italian clerk with whom he had worked in the South Sea House. Essays of Elia first appeared in London Magazine. Whom does Lamb describe as an archangel a little damaged? Coleridge. Who is a member of Cockney School? Hazlitt. Who wrote Letter to Mr. Gifford, The Round Table, Table Talk, The Spirit of the Age? William Hazlitt. Who is the author of Imaginary Conversations? Landor. Who started and edited Political Register, a weekly newspaper? William Cobbett. Who had said that truth is always stranger than fiction? Byron. Scott's novels are set in Scotland. Who wrote Waverley novels? Scott. The celebrated 20th century novelist Woolf had died by drowning herself. Which romantic poet who died a similar death? Shelley. Who had refused to accept the post of poet laureate in 1813 as a result of which it had gone to Robert Southey Scott, to whom poetry is at once the center and circumference of knowledge? Shelley. Who said in vain he jests in his unpolished strain and tries to make his reader laugh in vain? Addison. Who said one may be a poet without versifying and a versifier without poetry, Shelley. In which chapter of Biographia Literaria is the phrase willing suspension of disbelief mentioned? 14. Who think that the origin of poetry is in emotions reflected in tranquility? Wordsworth. Who said the Arnold's flights or short flights or circular flights? T.S. Eliot. Which chapters of Biographia Literaria are devoted to the study of Wordsworth? 14 to 22. Who said poetry sheds no tears such as angels weep, but natural and human tears? Wordsworth. On whom Arnold did not write an essay? Scott. Who chose humble and rustic life as the theme of the poetry? Wordsworth. Who said, if poetry instruct, it does go only through pleasure? Coleridge. Pant Isocracy is an ideal society envisaged by Coleridge and Southey. Who is not a lake poet in romantic period? Byron. The subtitle of Wordsworth's poem Michael is a pastoral. Conversational poems are associated with Coleridge. Coleridge, Tree Bower, My Prison is a conversational. I may not hope from outward forms to win the passion and the life whose fountains are within. These lines are from Coleridge's Dejection and Ode. Thank you so much for watching this video till the end. If you're having any suggestion, let me know in the comment section. We'll see you in next video. Tada, bye bye.